Hey guys, my name's Keyan Houshmand, and today we're going to be checking out the most extensive plugin that I've ever tried out in my life. It's the Mercurial Audio Euphoria plugin. Let's have a look. So if you guys haven't heard of Mercurial Audio before, they're a plugin company that makes a whole different type of plugins, but this one specifically is a guitar amp sim plugin, and it's modeled after the Bogner Ectasy 101B with the Cameron mod. And they have claimed to model this amp with the utmost precision using their neural hybrid 1.5 type engine. Basically, in a nutshell, this is the most in-depth plugin that I've ever seen in my life, and it just provides you with so many different options, which I'll go through shortly. But before we do any of that, if you guys like this video at any time, please feel free to leave a like and a comment on anything you see or hear. And if you want to see more of this stuff, definitely think about subscribing. If you guys want the tabs, stems, DIs, unprocessed drum tracks of the demo song that you're about to hear, as well as other demo songs in past and future, definitely check out my Patreon. I'll leave a link in the description. But without further ado, the most important question of all, how does it sound in a mix? So here it is, the Mercurial Euphoria. Now, as you can see, it has a very extensive interface. And this is the preset that I ended up making for it, which you heard in the demo song. So going through all the things that you get included within the plugin, you get a noise gate, graphic EQ, wah pedal, an overdrive, which I explained before. You can pick between the 3 different types of overdrives, distortion, preamp and power amp section, which you can turn on and off accordingly, a cabinet section where you can load up 2 different mics of the same cab, or you can use external IRs and load your own in, or you can just turn this section off completely and just use another plugin after the fact. Parametric EQ, chorus, delay, and reverb. So as you can see, there's a bunch of different things that you guys can use to manipulate your tones, and to be honest, this is probably the most extensive UI that I've ever seen in a plugin. So much so that this is the first time I've actually opened a manual for a plugin where it kind of lays out everything that you need to know about the plugin and what every little section does. So with that in mind, with all these little switches here and what they do and all the knobs and all the overdrive settings and stuff like that, this is the tone that I ended up getting. So just going through all the settings that I've chosen to make this tone, starting off with the noise gate, I've got the threshold a little bit over halfway. This will really depend on the actual input strength of your guitar going into your audio interface, so don't copy this exactly. Kind of get a feel for how your input is going into your interface, how it's coming out the plugin. Right now I've got it set at a point where it will chop off really nicely, but it won't sound too choppy. Hysteresis is all the way off, attack at halfway, and release all the way off. When you're running such a high gain tone, you pretty much have to have a noise gate, otherwise it will sound like this, which no one wants to hear. I don't really like to touch the EQ too much before the guitar actually goes into the amp, so I haven't done that. Wah pedal off because we're not using it. The overdrive that I chose, as I mentioned before, was the 808 type overdrive with the 808 version instead of the mod. Drive pretty much all the way off, level all the way up, and tone sitting at somewhere around 7 to 8. No distortion section engaged for this one. So moving on to the actual amp itself with the preamp and the power amp, as you can see, there are a bunch of different switches here which might seem a little bit overwhelming, and they pretty much all affect your final tone. So basically the end goal for the tone that I made before I even started making it was just to make it as modern as possible and something that I would really enjoy using, similar to what I've used in the past, getting it out of this amp sim. So the typical characteristics or something like that would be, something really mid-focus, something that cuts through the mix, almost like a saw-like quality to it when you attack your strings really hard, not too boomy, just kind of really well balanced and really cutting. So after consolidating with the user manual, these are the settings I chose. So starting off with the class switch, I chose AB instead of A because according to the manual, AB is a very modern voicing and it's what most modern amp types use, so that's what I chose. The A class is considered harmonically richer, yet it's less distinct, where the AB is a little bit more punchy and has more headroom. Just to showcase the difference between the two settings, right now I've got it set on A. But when you set it on AB, it has a little bit more punch and it's a little bit more distinct. just cuts that a little bit more. And then we can choose the old and new setting in the mode switch. So the new setting utilizes all of the 5 power amp tubes, whereas the old setting only uses 3, giving you a little bit smoother sound, much more vintagey type sound. But as I said before, I wanted to make it as modern as possible, which is why I've got it on new. Because this amp has 3 channels, like a clean channel, a bluesy crunchy type of channel, and a really high gain lead channel, which is the one that I'm on right now, as you can see here. Basically, these exertion switches control the different types of resonances between the different channels, and depending on what channel you pick, it will ultimately affect which setting you pick on here. So the MLT stands for medium, loose, and tight, and that basically just describes the feel of the amp when you're playing it. If you want it to be like the middle ground between loose and tight, if you want it to be a little bit looser, or if you want it to be modern and tight. As you can see here, based on what I was saying before, how I wanted to make it as modern as possible and really fit this type of tone, I put it on tight for both of them. And the select B switch pretty much determines which one of these exertion switches you want to apply to which channel. So at the moment, as you can see, the select B switch is on channel 3, which is the channel that I'm on right now, which is the really high gain channel. And what that basically means is the exertion B switch and the presence B switch are controlled only on the channel 3, and then exertion A and presence A are only on channel 1 and 2. So as you can see, when I touch presence A, it's not actually doing anything when I'm on channel 3. But as soon as I go to channel 2, and channel 1, it's affecting the presence control. As you can see, we have the volume, treble, mids, bass, and gain knob here, but that's only applicable to channel 1. When you go on channel 2 or 3, you're using these knobs over here. And as you can see, it stores the state of your knob. So if I go to channel 2, it's pretty much dead in the center because I haven't touched it. But if I change these around, went back to channel 3, and then went back to channel 2, they stay in the state that they were in, which is really, really handy. As you can see here, when using channel 1, the boost control is only applicable to channel 1, as well as the pre-EQ channel 1 control, aptly named pre-EQ channel 1. But basically what that means is the boost control only works on channel 1, so when you have it on low, there's low boost. When you have it on high, pushes it a little bit more, gets a little bit more gritty. Similarly with the presence control, N is pretty much normal, B is like almost like a Fender Twin brightness, and then the B2 is even brighter than that. So if you want really sparkly cleans, you can use the B2 setting, which is what I had it set on before. As opposed to the normal brightness setting. So obviously not as bright and a little bit more dull. So then moving on to the channel 2 and 3 switches up here. As you can see, we have the channel 3 mod, which when turned off, kind of makes everything a little bit looser, but when you turn it on, this is probably my favorite switch on the whole amp. It really gives it the characteristics that I'm looking for in a really high gain type tone. Flexi mode basically says what it is. It's just a plexi type mode for each channel on channel 2 and 3. Right now I've got it set off because I don't want to have a plexi type mode, but if I was to turn it on, you can tell it goes to that martially type of sound, but as soon as you turn it on off, it goes back to this really saturated high gain sound. The structure switch basically affects the gain levels of channels 2 and 3. As you can see, I have it switched on high, which sounds like this, as opposed to low, so again, not as gainy. Similarly with the channel 1 boost setting, the same thing is being applied here on channel 2 and 3, and I've got that set on high, as well as having individual presence controls for channels 2 and 3. So both of them are set on B2 because I like really, really bright tones that cut through the mix. And then going on to the actual amp settings. So channel 3, presence is pretty high, volume is around 3 to 4. Treble pretty high as well, a lot of mids because I wanted it to really punch through. I feel like this amp needed a little bit more mids than usual. And bass I've kind of just dialed up just a little bit over halfway. And then the gain I don't have set too high. I was actually really enjoying the way the channel 3 mod, the structure, and the boost switches all kind of work together to create a really high gain type structure without pushing it too much and sounding too woofy, which is what would happen if you push this actual gain knob. So all in all, And then last but not least, the cab section. So the cab that I've gone for is the 4x12 Modern, loaded up with G12M speakers, and I've got 2 mics on it right now. I've got an SM57 and a Ribbon 121, but most of the mix is going to the 57 because I want it to be like really cutting and get those high frequencies nice and tight. As you can see, this is the SM57 here on like the cabinet matrix, and this is the R121. So basically what it is that, as you can see here, there's like the cone, the cap, and the cone. So this is like a speaker here, and basically depending on where you set the 1 and 2, which is the SM57 and the 121, you can kind of control what type of sound you want to get out of the cabinet. So for example, if I wanted something a little bit more darker, I would have put the SM57 closer to the edge of the cone as opposed to right up in the cap where it was before. And then, as I mentioned before, the mic has a mix control, so you can kind of set the mix between the 2 different microphones mic'd up to the cabinet. So if I wanted something a little bit more boomy, I'll probably push it to the R121 more as opposed to kind of focusing on the SM57. But I really like the way it was kind of focused on the SM57. You have 3 mics to choose from on each side, so you got the SM57, the R121, and the MD441, which is pretty much the most standard microphones that you use when dialing in a high gain tone like this anyway, so that's fine. External IRs you can also load in, as I mentioned before, and you can even use reverb IRs, which I currently don't have any, but that sounds like a really, really cool feature. So as you can tell, a bunch of different options you can choose from, but you can really fine tweak it, which is what I did. I really sat here. As you can see, I have 3 different versions of the same preset. So I really sat here and dialed it in over the past week and kind of got the sound that I was looking for out of the plugin, which is this. Forgot to mention before, now that I've gone through all of that, there is the in and out control. So you have an input control which can set the gain of your actual guitar before it hits any of this plugin, and you can set the out control, which pretty much controls the volume outside of the plugin. Down on the very bottom, you might miss it, you actually have some really cool things. So you can control the look of the actual amp interface as well. You can have the vintage grill, which I've just chose, or you can have the modern grill, or even cooler than that, you can have nothing at all and see the actual tubes and everything, which is super cool. If you want to get really nerdy about it and control how well the plugin works with your computer, you can choose between the software or OpenGL UI renderer, which I won't even go through because there's no point, this is a music channel, but it's really cool to have that in there as well. So now that I've saved that as a version 3, as you can see here, it includes factory presets, which has so many different presets you can choose from, and each of them are pretty distinct from one another, and they really showcase the plugin's abilities to make unique tones with all the different things, such as like the choruses and the delays and reverbs and all that stuff. So going through all the presets that come included with the plugin, I'm not going to go through every single one because there's too many, but I'm going to handpick some favorites as I was going through them. The space one is really cool. If you put that on channel 1 to get a clean sound. There's some really cool lead patches built in. There's a rich blue lead patch, which is one of my favorites, using the second channel on the amp. Another one of my favorites is the Thresh Metal preset. It sounds really old school, really thrash metal, and it's just really fun to play around with. And then of course you're going to get your AC/DC type tones in there, so the British sound PA overload, which I assume is just a really cranked Marshall type sound. And then to bring it all home and show off the versatility of the plugin even more, you have a jazz type preset. So all in all, this is probably one of the most extensive plugins that I've ever seen in my life, and if you were to go through every single option within this plugin, you'd be sitting here for days. But that just goes to show the value for money that you're getting, because I'm pretty sure we can all tell by now that it doesn't sound bad, that's for sure. It sounds absolutely amazing, and all the different options you get is just a bonus. So that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, if you enjoyed the Mercurial Audio Euphoria as well as the video, definitely leave a like, and if you want to see more of this stuff, definitely subscribe. All the links to the Mercurial Audio website and stuff will be down in the description. You guys can try it out for yourself and let me know what you think in the comments below. Again, if you guys want the tabs, stems, DIs, and unprocessed drum tracks for the demo song that you heard at the beginning, definitely check out my Patreon or leave a link in the description. Massive thanks to all my Patreons. Without you guys, I would not be in the position to make this video right now, and I'm eternally grateful to you. Thank you so much. But until next time, I'll catch you guys later. Thank you so much for watching. Ciao.